Welcome to Death Holler. Do you like scary movies? Welcome to Season 3, Slash or Pass. There will be laughter, tears, tender moments.
Jason, my special boy.
But most of all, screams. Remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is always advised. We hope you have a killer time.
Welcome back to a very sleep-deprived Death Holler. I'm your host and resident insomniac, the Reverend Dr. Death. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, the Latina Nightmare, Llareyna. Have your dreams been lately, Llareyna?
Fucking wicked, for the most part. But no Freddy Krueger nightmares, I can assure that, so.
Yeah, I didn't have any from like watching these films, which we'll get into in a little bit, but I remember as a kid, like definitely having, I mean, because you always do, like, especially when you're that age, like 11 years old, and, you're having nightmares all the time anyways, just because of hormonal changes, but it makes it even worse when you're watching these types of films.
We were but wee children when, we were literally babies when the first one came out. Wondering if the parents watched it, but we did eventually watch these. And yes, I had the nightmares of running kind of stuck in place. I had nightmares of hearing the children singing, or being on a, dark, empty playground, knowing something sinister was out there. So yes, I have had Freddy nightmares. And looking back on it now, awesome,
Before Wes Craven single-handedly reinvigorated the horror genre in the mid-90s, he hit it big with a slasher film that would define an entire production studio in the mid-80s, New Line Cinema. Commonly referred to as the house that Freddy built, it was the overwhelming success of Nightmare on Elm Street that led to Wes Craven being known as the modern horror master that he is, or was, and eventually paved the way for us to have a little heard-of trilogy called Lord of the Rings. I mean, it really was. New Line was the one that fronted the bill for that, and they wouldn't even have been a studio if it hadn't been for Nightmares. So today, in the first of several podcasts dedicated to Mr. Fred Krueger, we will be discussing Nightmare on Elm Street parts 1 through 3 and giving out our Death Holler awards for each film. So kick up your feet, pop some no-dos, brew a pot of coffee, and for the love of all that is holy, do not fall asleep. Don't fall asleep. But first, if you're enjoying the podcast, we would appreciate it if you would take the time to like, comment, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It helps us get more visibility on podcast listings and helps us grow. Also, consider following us on social media. You can find us on TikTok and Twitter under Death Holler Pod, and we can be found on Instagram and Facebook under Death Holler Podcast. We appreciate everyone who listens and hope you enjoy the show. First up, the OG, Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Tagline: if Nancy doesn't wake up screaming, she won't wake up at all.
Ooh, pretty good.
That's a pretty good tagline.
Yeah.
Directed by Wes Craven, written by Wes Craven, music by Charles Bernstein, who is the GOAT. Like, the music in the first Nightmare is the best outside of Halloween that horror genre has to offer. Legit. Like, you go back and you listen to that just, the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And then just the little incidental, instrumentals that they have throughout. It's very creepy. Very good stuff.
He also unintentionally composed our disclaimer. Please don't come after me.
Made for a budget of $1.8 million, it made $57 million.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I almost died. Literally, I was like, "What the?" You can't not continue the series after that kind of success.
No, and $1.8 million is almost a micro budget.
Yeah.
Even back then, I mean, you're talking about, films like I know that the Friday, films we discussed were like, in the 2-3 million range. But I mean, you start going under that and you start getting into like shot on video style, like a budget. So the fact that this movie holds up as well as it does, I mean, there's some jank in some of the stuff, but I mean, God, for that budget, they really stretched that budget in this movie.
Oh, yeah. And you got to admit, like, Freddy Krueger, I know he gets better every film. The look of him gets better every film, but it didn't start looking terrible, in my opinion.
No, not at all. I have a comment about that later, but yeah, it starts out pretty good, actually. I mean, there's actually some argument that it gets bad around part 6 because the fact that they started, and I don't blame him, I mean, this is probably jumping the gun a little bit, but, Robert Englund got tired of having to sit in the makeup chair for as long as he did for the appliances. So they just started, making a full on rubber mask, and you can start telling later on that it's not as good. Principal players, we have Heather Langenkamp playing Nancy Thompson, the final girl, and she is one of the final girls that defines the role. Like, there's a reason, like, once you watch Scream 6, go back and watch our review of it, but there's a line in that movie, not spoiling anything, where they talk about franchises, and then one of the characters' name, calls like other famous final girls, and Nancy is one of them that they name drop. And there's a reason for that. She stands up there with Laurie Strode, with Sally Hardesty. She's big time in the horror genre.
Yes.
She was recently in the Midnight Club that was on Netflix. She was also in a short called Cottonmouth. I didn't realize this, but she was actually a regular on the sitcom in the late 80s, Just the 10 of Us. Like, she was on a lot of those episodes, like a ton of them. And not the only Nightmare alum that's in that series. We'll get to that eventually, too. And then, of course, she was in the Fat Boys video, Are You Ready for Freddy?
Which, I mean, big mistake if you don't have her. She's a fine final girl. And she was quintessential 80s babe.
Yes.
Especially as we get into the, not upper films, but later on.
When we get to Dream Warriors, she's flat out gorgeous.
Oh, yes.
Like, beautiful. She's a little bit, and this is, going ahead a little bit on the, discussion. She's a little bit flat in the first movie, and I know she gets, there's a lot of, people that brings that up, but she does a pretty good job, and she drastically improves, like, when she comes back later in the series.
Well, she was brand new. Well, I wouldn't say brand new, but she was, like, fairly new. She's younger, I don't know what role she had prior. I'm sure we'll discuss probably, but, I mean, come on, And they probably didn't think this movie was going anywhere, potentially. And she did a serviceable enough job when it comes to the acting in the film. It's not terrible. It's just like, and I would argue that there's somebody worse in the film as far as the acting, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I'm sure.
Of course, Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare Demon, Slasher. And this is for contention. He was originally supposed to be a pedophile. They nixed that, thinking, okay, we probably don't want to go this route. So they just made him a child murderer, which isn't much better, honestly.
Yeah, I think it is.
But they did come back in the remake and go with the original that he was a pedophile. So there's, there's that whole thing.
Look, here's the thing. I'll qualify why I think it's better that he's just a child murderer, because you can potentially forgive that depending on who you are as a person. I mean, I probably won't, but whatever. But someone who did something horrible and then murdered your child.
Yeah, that's even worse.
Yeah, 10 times worse. So, and not only that, but when I was watching these movies, and I wasn't scared at all, and because unfortunately, yet fortunately, Freddy Krueger is a likable character.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes it better that they changed his backstory slightly, because he is, especially the farther you get along in the series, like he's got a weird charisma to him, and you're like, I don't want to root for this guy, but like,
but I'm rooting for this guy. And I was thinking that lesson, I was like, okay, fucking when I was a kid, Freddy Krueger was horrific to me. Like, I didn't even want to see posters of him. I didn't want to see anything. And now he's everywhere, which could be somebody's nightmare depending on, whatnot. But like, my kids love him. It's like one of my daughter's favorite characters. My son obviously prefers Jason, whatever. They're everywhere. And it's like, okay, well, it's a good thing they did make him somewhat charismatic.
Yeah, and he is probably the only slasher. Well, him and Chucky are the only two that really stand. I mean, we'll get into Candyman too. He's on that spectrum, but it's between Chucky and Freddy as far as the two that like stand out as far as the personality. Because you got Jason, who just him and Michael, they're just the silent stalkers. Like, they really don't engage at all, but with their prey. But like, Freddy in particular, and that also feeds into the whole thing about, I don't know that they truly ever took out the pedophile portion to him, because he gets very creepily sexual with some of these, like, quote, high schoolers in some of these movies.
I mean, look at some of them are hot.
Well, that's true, and they were also 20-something when they were playing it. So I mean, that's
it makes it okay, folks.
Of course, Robert Englund is horror alum. He's been in all kinds of things. He recently was in Stranger Things season 4, playing a very interesting role given his Freddy history.
Yes, basically he was playing Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, he was in the Goldbergs playing Freddy.
Oh my God!
On one of their recent episodes in the last 2 or 3 years.
How fucking lucky! You got the Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, he was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as the Dire Beaver, who is a beaver who causes nightmares, which is hilarious.
Wait, the original one or the newer one?
The new one, yeah. Okay. The new one that came out.
The newer one, I had told you about that before. I kind of liked it. I'm not even upset. They had a lot of fucking, like, A-list actors voicing characters on that.
We are not, however, talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem that's coming out from Seth Rogen in theaters here soon. That looks like a woke piece of trash. And I think it's funny that they race swapped April, which, you always got to get rid of the redhead. And,
yes.
But they also made her overweight. And a lot of people are saying it's one thing to race swap her, but at least make her attractive like she used to be. And and they made her heavy set for diversity, but fat, and then so now she's got the nickname April O'Meal.
Oh no. And not only that, but okay, if they race swapped her, wouldn't you want I guess it's messed up to say that a big woman can't be, like, did they make her thick or did they make her overweight?
She's dumpy. Like, she's not like curvy. She's dumpy. Like, if you imagine one of those bodies where it's like the fat just rounds, like the farther they get down onto the body, and then they got like chicken legs. Yeah. That's kind of
any race or nationality can be overweight. Okay, you can get representation no matter what, but generally, and this is a compliment, and take it for how you feel. Maybe you don't think it is, but generally, African American women can be thick and not be dumpy. They could have done that, and that would have been a whole different story.
Yeah, it would have made the situation different, And then there's people like on the other side, trying to comment, well, going back to the pedophile thing, like it's, why are you talking about this? She's supposed to be, a younger teenage girl or something. And I'm like, why did they make that change?
Yeah.
April was older than Turtles. That was the whole thing. Like, she was the hot older lady that they, always fantasized about.
It's so true. God, what a weird dynamic. We were into, what is that called? Bestiality at very young ages here.
Yeah, there's actually it's funny. There's a like a picture, like a still from like the 80s cartoon where Michelangelo basically has his hand on April's breast, and it's and he's kind of glancing down. It's they knew what they were doing.
Oh my God. Well,
but getting back to Robert Englund, he was also in the Lake Placid TV movies. He was in Strippers versus Werewolves. He was in Supernatural. I believe he played another character that messed with dreams in that. He was in Zombie Strippers. A lot of stripper themes going on. Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer. The Hatchet film, which was opposite Kane Hodder, which, who go on was the later Jason. So that was kind of interesting getting the two of them on the screen together before they were, I think that was before Freddy versus Jason. And then it's kind of funny. He was in a movie called As a Bad Dream, which has nothing to do with any horror stuff. It's a drama about war traumas, but it's just hilarious that they got him, of all people, to play in a movie called that. Dee Snider's Strangeland. In The Simpsons, he played Freddy. He was in Urban Legend, which we'll be covering at some point this season. Strangeland. I think I just copied that again. The Mangler, which is a pretty interesting Stephen King movie about a laundromat that has a washing machine that can kill you, which is weird. Or the guy might actually kill people with the washing machine. I don't really know. I've never really paid attention to that movie. It's kind of on the odd.
The cleanest death you've ever seen.
The cleanest death, yeah. Dance Macabre, which is I heard he dances in that one, like it's a horror film, but there's like actual dancing in it. It's weird. And Phantom of the Opera, the 89 version, and he played an arsonist on Night Court, which I find hilarious because Freddy and his history with burning, and then he plays an arsonist. And of course, we've already mentioned that he was in Toby Hooper's Eaten Alive, where he played Buck, who just liked to fuck. So there's that. Which isn't too different from Freddy either, strangely. Amanda Weiss plays Tina Gray, Nancy's friend, and the first to see Freddy in the franchise. She was in a movie called Big Legend, which I believe was about a Sasquatch. The Hatred, she was in an episode of Charmed, and she was in the big 80s Western Silverado. Had a lot of big name actors at the time in that one. Jesus Garcia, aka Nick Corey, he went by a different name back in the day whenever he was actually an actor. I guess they didn't, if you didn't want to be a Latino, or at least have that name, if you wouldn't have more of a white name if you were being cast back in the 80s. Plays Rod Lane, Tina's on again, off again boy toy. He was in We Were Soldiers, Devil in the Flesh 2, and then Candyman, Day of the Dead. Johnny Depp, don't know who that guy
Never
is.
heard of him.
Plays Glenn Lance, Nancy's boyfriend. And this is actually the introduction of Johnny Depp. This is his first film, I believe.
Wow.
What a way to get introduced to the public. Heavy Billy Loomis vibes.
Oh, yes.
From this character. You clearly see the through line between the two of them.
Yes.
Ronnie Blakely plays Marge Thompson, Nancy's mom, who always perpetually in this movie looks like she's down the fuck. I don't know, like, I looked her like IMDb up because like she has this look on her face, like getting back to what I was saying earlier, she's the worst actress in this movie. Like she hardly ever has the concern on her face like, for what her daughter, but then she perpetually looks like she's horny. So I don't know, like, I thought that they might have cast like a porn actress or something to play this part, but no, like she was a soap opera type stuff, but like,
which it seems to be a running occurrence of these moms that don't care about their daughters in this, at least in 2 out of 3 of the films we watched.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And
actually, no, there's out of 3 films because the dad doesn't care in part 2.
Oh, that's true. Well, I was going with the mom theme, which is weird.
Well, but it's all guys in part 2. We'll get to
that. Yes, we will. And in part 3, that mom was DTF for sure. We'll get to that.
Oh yes, she definitely was. But am I wrong in that? Like, I mean, every time Ronnie Blakely's on screen in this movie, she's like just got horror makeup applied like to the nines. Like she looks like she's getting ready to go out and get her a man for the night. Like she and she's like, oh Nancy, you're like she looks like, I mean, and I know in the movie they play up the fact that she's been drinking and stuff, but she doesn't look drunk. She looks stoned or like on some kind of medication like through most of the film.
Kind of like Finn Wolfhard's mom in Stranger Things too.
Yes.
Hot.
Although that lady got really fine in the third season of that when Billy was in there. Yeah.
No, that's what I meant. I meant that season. So I thought it was the second one for some reason.
Yeah. So yeah, Ronnie Blakely, definitely the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the acting in this film. But one of the highlights is John Saxon playing Lieutenant Thompson, Nancy's dad and the investigator of the film. He acts he doesn't have a lot of scenes in this film, but he acts his ass off in it.
Yes.
He's one of the highlights, actually. And then we have Lynn Shay for one of the first times that I can recall being in this movie, playing the teacher in the film. And I only bring it up because Robert Shay was the head of New Line. So, Lynn Shay being his wife, that's maybe why she became, part of the movies. And then she ended up becoming a horror icon after that because she was for sure in a lot of the Insidious movies that have been recently released.
Oh, yeah.
She plays the psychic in those films.
Yes.
Synopsis for this film. 1-2, Freddy's coming for you. 3-4, better lock your door. 5-6, grab a crucifix. 7-8, going to stay up late. 9-10, never sleep again. And that's all the synopsis you need for this film.
All you need to know. It keeps the bad guy away.
But yeah, I mean, everybody knows the story now. It's a child killer gets murdered by the police on Elm Street, because their kids have been killed by him. They get because they kill him because and burn him alive because due to I think they reveal later, or maybe even in this film, they reveal something about there was the search warrant wasn't filled out properly. Some little technicality. He was not. They couldn't arrest him, and so he got off scot-free. Parents took it upon themselves to get justice. They kill him, but and then they kind of retcon some things later on and say he made a pact with nightmare demons and all this other stuff. But in this film, he's basically just a vengeful ghost who's coming back to further his work on taking the children from the people who killed him. And that's basically, and then he works in the nightmare because that's the one place that you can't protect your child is in their dreams.
Makes sense. And then it makes sense for Insidious too, why they kind of chose that.
That's true. They went kind of a similar route in that one. Body count in this one is surprisingly low. Only 4 people counted. 25 are non-counted. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
We have Tina Gray slashed across the chest with finger knives. But doesn't sound very interesting, but the fact that she's rolling around on the ceiling while this is happening, that's the interesting part. Rod Lane is hanged with a bed sheet in a jail cell. Glenn Lance is pulled into his bed and then turned into a blood geyser.
It's beautiful.
Probably the best death we'll ever get in any of these movies, period, or like any slasher, because it's just so out there.
Oh, yeah.
Marge Thompson burned to death and then descended into the abyss. Just floats into the bed and she's gone. And then the non-counted deaths are 20 Elm Street kids that were killed by Freddy when he was actually alive, according to Marge. And then Freddy Krueger himself burned to death by the angry mob. But of course, that didn't take him out.
Yeah. Wasn't he like kind of, well, I wouldn't say so much fake killed, but put in his place at the end? I guess that's not really considered a death, though.
No, we'll get to that in part 3. He's never officially received a death until part 3, and of course that didn't take because they made other movies.
Spoiler alert, everyone.
The alt taglines: "She is the only one who can stop it. If she fails, no one survives."
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure.
It's a little too much pressure for a teenager.
Yeah.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them in their dreams.
Sorry to any kids in the 80s that actually lived on an Elm Street.
Which is almost every state has an Elm Street. So that, that's why it's popular.
Yes.
Of course, 1-2, Freddy's Coming for You is a tagline.
Oh, yeah.
From suspense master Wes Craven, the director of Hills Have Eyes and The Last House on the Left, comes a new film of fantasy terror. This one's the worst. Watch this! Exclamation mark.
Ooh.
I don't know what to think about this one. It's got all kinds of weird vibes. You won't be sleeping alone.
Oh, thank God, because I hate that.
There's something out there. ... Okay. Don't fall asleep.
I mean,
exclamation mark.
A little more sinister there.
It's even more sinister when Yoda says it, though, in the Seagulls video.
Oh, my God.
That, folks. Welcome to your nightmare.
I mean, Alice Cooper made a song about it. No, it was Welcome to My Nightmare. Never mind.
Yeah, but I don't know which came first, but that's what I thought it was instantly, was the Alice Cooper. Midnight, baseball bats, and boogeyman. I don't even know what that means. That was like random words that people slapped together. I'm glad that, they had the tagline that I mentioned first, is the best that you're ever going to get. The rest of these are just shit.
Midnight baseball bats and boogeymen is how you get a goth girl to go on a date. Sounds like a real good time.
Come to Freddy. That's better than Come for Freddy.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
What's in a dream anyway?
Fucking blow me.
Dream a little nightmare of me.
Not gonna lie, I kind of like that one. Oh God.
Meet the Glove.
No. Ew, that's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like something from a nightmare. Okay, kind of generic. It works, I guess. The first word in terror from the director of Scream. That one had to be applied later because he was like, whatever. That I don't even understand. Sleep kills. Just sleep kills.
It can. It's some people have died in their sleep, so it's not a lie. It's facts.
Yeah. A scream that wakes you up might be your own. Now, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep or you'll meet the terrifying Freddy.
It went a little too long.
Yeah. Quotes from Nancy Thompson looking in the mirror. Oh, God, I look 20 years old.
You know what, Nancy? Fuck you.
I'll get to why that's funny in the trivia, but but I saw when I was watching the movie, I was like, fuck you, wait until you're 40 and then say shit like that, People
tell us we look 40 or 20 now or in our 20s or even in our 30s. We're like, thank you, you sweet young child.
Sweet summer child. Marge Thompson, Nancy, and then Nancy, of course, what mother? Marge, don't fall asleep in there. You could drown, And then Nancy, oh, for Pete's sake. And then Marge, it happens all the time. I've heated up some warm milk for you, honey. And Nancy Thompson, warm milk, gross. Yeah. That's one of the scenes where the reason I put this in here was that is the worst acting that the actress who plays Ronnie, who plays Marge, does in the whole entire movie. It is so cheesy and over the top for what's been happening to Nancy. It's like, I've made some warm milk for you. I'm like, ugh.
For some reason it reminds me of that scene in Peggy Sue. I don't think it's Peggy Sue Gets Married, but it's like, you know what a penis is, right, Peggy Sue? Stay away from them. That actress had a better scene than fucking Marge in this scene, okay?
that is true.
She also had a better tagline or a better...
That is Peggy Sue Got Married, because the funny thing about that is that, everybody around her is so cheesy, but, she's from, the 80s, so she's, or around that time period, so she's a little bit more hard-edged, dealing with, this 1950s shit. So she's like, oh, blow me,
Yeah, pretty much.
Marge Thompson, not from what, from whom? Come down to the cellar. You know who Freddy Krueger was. He was a filthy child murderer who killed at least 20 kids in the neighborhood, kids we all knew. It drove us crazy. We didn't know who it was, but it was even worse after they caught him. And then Nancy was like, did they put him away? And then Marge was, Well, all the lawyers got fat and the judge got famous, but someone forgot to sign the search warrant in the right place, and Kruger was free just like that. A bunch of us parents got together and tracked him down. We found him in an old abandoned boiler room where he used to take his kids. We took gasoline and poured it all over the place and made a trail of it out the door. We lit the whole thing up and watched it burn. He's dead now. He's dead because Mommy killed him. And then she reveals Freddie's glove. And Marge Thompson, I even took his knives. And then Marge touches Nancy on the knee, and then Nancy's like, you can sleep, you know. I put that in there just because that's like the one bit of backstory that sets up the whole franchise, basically, you know. Still acted really weird by Ronnie. Like it's way too complacent for what's going on. Like she should have been breaking down in that scene, you know.
Yeah.
It's like she's sedated again. Like I know it's just supposed to be booze, but I don't feel like she wasn't slurring. It was like somebody who's actually on an opioid, like a narcotic or something. It's just like, yeah, we killed him, Nancy. You know, like my feelings are numb to everything right now. I don't care, you know.
Yeah. It's okay.
And then this one's the best in the movie. Glenn trying to get some sleep on the couch alone, but the sounds of Tina and Rod having sex is keeping him up. Morality sucks. And this is the one part of the movie that he really, really brought on Billy Loomis vibes, because that's Billy's whole thing, is that, like, you know, prior to the reveal that, like, his mother, like, left him because of, you know, Sydney's mom, like, throwing her shit around town. It's the fact that, you know, Billy throughout the movie is constantly cock-blocked by Sydney, and, like, you know, and he's, you know, like, he's got that horny anger about him. And this is the one scene in the movie where Glenn has the same thing. It's like, you know, that could have been me, but Nancy's a prude, so here we are.
Selfish son of a bitch. You know what, Billy? We know you were cheating because you have a fucking daughter now.
True.
You
very
whore.
True. All right, get to the movie review. Visuals. For this budget, this movie looks amazing.
Oh, yeah, it does. And I would have never, well, I guess when it goes to the 80s, I keep forgetting that other movies had higher budgets. So now that I know how low the fucking budget was, yeah, pretty fucking impressed.
There's some jank in the movie when Freddy's arms like extend in that one scene with Tina where it's like they stretch out really wide, and the way that he moves with them, it looks kind of goofy.
We get a lot of goofy from the Freddy movies, though, even as the budget gets bigger. Fuck, we got a fucking claymation Freddy in the third one, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not here to judge.
Several times we get a claymation Freddy in the third one.
I'm not here to judge is what I'm saying.
I don't mind it. I mean, it's got a dream logic to it, which, you know, they can get by with. That's an excuse because, I mean, like the way that the arms move, I mean, you're dealing with different physics and dreams,
yeah,
so.
For sure.
Freddy's makeup. I call him later in the Death Holler review Trudeau Freddy, and I say that because of the blackface. It's cool in a way because it makes sense. I mean, if he was burned alive, there would be like the scorch mark, you know, like the soot on his face. But it's really weird versus like the later, you know, versions of him, because later it's just like the burned, scarred pock marks, but his skin is, you know, just, you know, regular. But like in this one, there's a lot of black char on his face, which actually seems more real.
It does.
In that sense.
And as Will Smith said in his song, he comes to me at night when I crawl into bed. He's burnt up like a weenie, and his name is Fred. And he is. He looks like a burnt weenie. I mean, it's an ongoing joke.
That's my favorite meme ever. It's like this person's like, you know, they're sitting there and there's a picture of like a couple, there's a burnt hot dog on a grill, and somebody's like, who keeps sending me pictures of these burnt wieners? And then it shows Freddy.
Yeah,
and he's like,
you know,
I love it. I love it.
Speaking of, I have to say, it is just too bad that Donnie G is not reviewing movies currently, because I think I downloaded the wrong Freddy Krueger movie. Would have been fucking awesome.
There is so many like variants of Freddy where Freddy is an attractive female.
Oh God.
I mean, it's a huge thing.
Well, there's the one who has the fucking, instead of knives on his hand, he's got fucking 5 dildos. So that would have been.
Yeah, there's that one. Yeah.
God.
I would say for the budget in this, though, I mean, like the nightmare sequences look pretty cool. Like even whenever they try to do, it's not CGI because it was before CGI, but like some of the fade ins and fade outs they do look pretty good. And like that practical stuff where they have like the blood gushing out of the bed.
Oh my God.
Death.
Yes.
And then the scene where Tina's rolling around the ceiling. Oh, it's A+ stuff. Like it stands up.
They did a really good job. And you can tell. I feel like you can tell, I don't know how long this goes or if it continues for the entire film franchise, but you can almost tell when they're in a dream because it's got the I guess, camera has more of a softer glow. The scene has a softer glow to it. It almost looks angelic for a minute, and then it's like, nah, bitch, you're going to die.
Yeah, they especially toward the end of the movie. Which is the one source of contention that I have with the visuals. That scene where Marge gets pulled through the window and she looks like a blow-up doll that's deflating is like the most hilarious part of the franchise.
Yes, it happens.
And this isn't a trivia, but that's actually the reason that scene looks so shitty is because it was a very, very last-minute addition.
Yeah.
Wes Craven actually wanted the movie to end on a positive note. Nancy had defeated Freddy completely, and she was just going to live her life, and then I think that even her friends were back to life at that point. Like it was all like a bad dream, like she had, recovered from. But the studio was like, no, we want the possibility of a franchise. So make it to where like, Freddy, pops up again, last minute. So that whole last scene was a total add-on by the studio.
Yeah. And I'm not mad.
There is something that has to be mentioned about Freddy's sweater. It goes through different changes throughout the series. This one does not have like the green bands around the arms. They're only on the stripes are only on the shirt, the torso of the shirt.
God, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it gets changed slightly as you go along, but it's mostly how the face makeup is and then the sweater. But yeah, that's one of them. That's the difference between this and the later
ones. Which is
ones.
Hilarious because why do you need to change the sweater? Nobody's noticing the sweater. I mean, not nobody noticed it. The sweater is a big. Obviously, it's Freddy. You know it when you see it. Clearly, we've seen it in the Scream movies. Just hanging there. I mean. Okay, yes, we know it's a thing, but like, if it had never changed, it still would have been a fucking iconic sweater.
It would have been. I think they just added the bands to the arms too, because that makes even more like visual chaos on the sweater, because that's one of the things that's in the trivia. But like red and green, I think it was Craven saw some kind of study saying that those are the two most recognizable colors to humans. And that's the reason, and they're also diametrically opposed as far as like visually. So together, they can actually they're actually colors that we don't like to see together, even though Christmas is full of red and green, which is hilarious.
Yeah, and this is a different red and green though. It's like a brick red and a olive green, or
yeah. So it's one of those things where it was chosen for the how it makes us feel as like evolutionary reasons, and I think they punched it up in the later ones by adding the bands to the arms too, to kind of be like, all right, we got all kinds of this chaos going on.
Interesting. Okay, well there's a rhyme to the reason, I guess.
Yeah. I'm trying to think visually if there's anything else I want to bring up. I mean, I still think the first movie looks great.
Oh,
it
yeah.
Really does.
Especially considering the budget. And, my husband says it a lot. He's like, sometimes it's the lower budget ones that they seem to get more creative with because they have to.
Yeah, they have to. We mentioned that in Friday the 13th part 6. They had a curmudgeon of a production designer, or the guy who's the financier for the movie, was constantly cutting their budget last second, and even though they hated him, the director actually said that he appreciated it after the fact because they had to get super creative to stay in budget. He said they'd had all the money they had, they wouldn't have came up with half the gags they did just because they wouldn't have had to. Story. It's a friggin' good basis for a slasher. a great one. There's a reason Freddy's like an icon, because vengeful, child murderer ghost that only can attack you or attacks you while you're sleeping. I mean, that's like the worst nightmare for both kids and adults. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, because the parents can't protect their kids, and the kids, you have to sleep. There's no way you can't get away from Freddy at all.
Oh, yeah. Either you're going to die from lack of sleep, which is very possible, or you're going to fucking die from sleeping.
Yeah,
which
that's
is now
your
possible.
two options.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add about the story as far as that goes?
Yeah, just that throughout the franchise, they add a little bit to the story. As later, I'm sure it'll start to get a little, a little bit much as we go on. But like up until part 3, they did kind of add a little bit, and I thought it was perfect. So I liked how the story was buildable too, of some sorts.
Yeah, there was just enough vagueness in parts of like Freddy's backstory that they could add stuff in.
Yes.
The pact with the nightmare demons was okay. It was an alright addition. Didn't need to be there, but it didn't hurt anything. The one addition that really hurt them though was in part 6, where they added the fact that Freddy had a daughter, and that he was actually a family man prior to prior to him being burned alive. And it doesn't fit. I mean, if you got somebody who's willing to murder children, I mean, I know there's probably been serial killers in the past.
There for sure has been.
But I don't know if they were. I mean, the way they portray him, he was like the idyllic 1950s like father, and I don't know that you could be that and go out and kill other children. Like,
there are quite a few iconic serial killers that were the perfect dad, but they did some fucking sadistic shit to other children.
Maybe it's a thing, but there's still parts of it that don't jive with the other canon, and that's part of the reason part 6 is like, a lot of fans least favorite because of the changes they made. I will say, as far as the story goes, there are other fans out. I mean, it's been like elaborated upon in other media too.
Mm-hmm.
And Nathan Thomas Milner, who's like a local, like to this area, Kentucky, he lives in Louisville, the Louisville area. He's made like some of his own, like, movies, and like, he's an artist, very good, like artist as it were. But he made like a little fan film under his label, and I think it's on YouTube. It's under Rebel Rouser Comics, I think is what he had it labeled under, but it was the Confessions of Fred Krueger, and it's really well done. It's basically right after Freddy. There's a short intro where it shows like Freddy first coming to Springwood, which is what they later revealed. They changed the location later too. They retconned it. It's clearly California in this movie. You see palm trees everywhere.
Oh,
but
yeah.
then they changed it to Springwood, Ohio. And so anyways, there's the scene where Freddy's a hobo that just comes in the town. He like kills the guy that he's staying with, as he's building like his knives, he starts like stalking the playgrounds to murder these kids, and it skips ahead. And the bulk of it is he's been caught and he's being interrogated, and they're trying to fill in his backstory. And Nathan is like such a big fan of the Freddy franchise, because that's what got him into horror to begin with, that like, I mean, he went through like books that like talked about like, what Freddy was, how it was supposed to have went with his backstory, and he keeps it totally legit according to the old canon before part 6 comes out. Like, and it's fairly well done actually. So
yeah.
And they even have a scene where like he completely confesses to killing the kids, but then there's like a disturbance where the cops who's interrogating him hears that his daughter might be missing, and then like, and he rushes out of the room for a second to kind of, to find out what they mean by that, and then like Fred sets fire basically to the confession tape, and they have nothing to go off of, even though he confessed to everything.
Yeah.
So it's pretty well done, but like I said, the story's been elaborated in various different ways, good and bad, as far as going forward. Not as bad as what Michael's was though. Michael Myers, when we get to that film franchise, boy, they fucked that shit up. I mean, we'll get to that though.
Yes.
The acting, we've already kind of discussed it. I know Johnny Depp is like an amazing actor now. Like you watch this movie though, and I don't know about you, but I never got that out. Like we talked about like that Jack Champion in the new Scream. I mean, not revealing anything about him, but like you can tell he's got potential. Like there's a lot there.
The kid is going places.
I never got that out of the portrayal of Glenn in this movie.
No, not at all. But I will tell you what Johnny Depp had. He had good looks. He had good looks. And so they're like, we're going to fucking make some shit work. From acting, I got from every single actor in this film, aside from Mr. Krueger himself, typical 80s low-budget film acting. They didn't think that this franchise was going to go anywhere.
And that's true, and they were hiring a lot of fresh faces. The Weiss, who plays Tina, is not terrible. She's probably of the 4 teenagers, she's probably the standout. Rod's not bad either. I mean, he's more of like an after school, like, you know, drama, like a PSA type character, because like he's more like he's overacting at parts.
Yeah.
And then but which is good for the franchise. England just knocks it out of the park. Like, him and Saxon are the 2 best actors in the entire movie.
Now, was he in films before this movie? I think he was.
England was, but he wasn't he wasn't a huge actor.
Yeah.
Like this made him into the actor that, you know, that gave him the career. Like that's why people seek him out, is because of this.
Yeah.
But he had acting chops, even playing in Eaten Alive. Like, I mean, Buck was kind of a one-note character, but he acted the shit out of that role.
Yeah.
So, Saxon had been in several movies prior to this. He was a seasoned actor, so that stands to reason. I mean, we talked about he was in Black Christmas, for one, playing a very similar character. I mean, a police detective who's investigating the deaths. Yeah. So, he was kind of playing the type, but he was good at that type. But yeah, I agree with you. It's the acting from everybody else is, you know, just, I mean, it's serviceable. It's 80s, you know, low budget acting, but there's no standouts. And then the music, my God, the music in this is amazing.
Oh my God. It is, quintessential. Just, you hear it and it'll send chill. I don't know. I feel like if you're an 80s kid, you hear the music and it'll send chills down your spine.
Oh yeah. As soon as you hear those, just that little there's a couple different, like, you know, instrumentals that are in this movie that as soon as you hear them, it's just like, oh fuck, where's Freddy at, you know? Like, yeah, it's totally associated with this franchise.
It's just weird because I have raised a different generation of children where we hear that song, we're like, fuck, and our children hear it and they're like, oh, where is he? Like, they get excited. Freddy's near. Like, you fucking weirdos.
But yeah, you can't, I mean, we've talked about it before. There's certain franchises where the music is so iconic that it makes the franchise what it is. And I feel like the visuals, England's performance, and that music is why this movie did. I mean, that's not taking anything from Craven. The story was good for what it was, but if those other elements hadn't been there, this wouldn't have been shit. Series. And that goes to show you that it takes a village, folks, to make a movie.
And to take down a bad man and burn him up like a weenie.
So he can send you dick pics of that burnt weenie later. Anything else you want to say about the movie before we move on? I mean, we'll get to our rankings of the film series later, but it's hard to beat the original in a lot of franchises, and this one started out super strong.
Oh, yeah, it came in like a fucking wrecking ball. So good luck to the others as we continue into the series.
Trivia. So New Line Cinema was saved from bankruptcy by the success of this film, and that's why it's jokingly named The House That Freddy Built.
That's awesome.
Heather Langenkamp's boyfriend at the time of the shooting is credited for creating Freddy's nursery rhyme.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good.
Dude, that's surprising.
All of the boiler room footage in the film was shot in the basement of the Lincoln Heights jail in Los Angeles, which was condemned shortly after production wrapped due to high levels of asbestos.
Oh, wonderful. Let's put our actors over there.
In the original script, Freddy was a child molester. However, the decision was made to change him into being a child murderer to avoid accusations of exploiting a series of child molestations in California around the time of production. He was rewritten as a child molester in the 2010 remake starring Jackie Earle Haley.
Boo.
The inspiration for the character of Freddy came from several sources in Wes Craven's childhood. Fred Krueger was a schoolmate of his with whom he shared a paper route and who bullied him for years.
Wow.
Which, if you remember back, that's Vic Miller. The reason that Jason is named Jason is because he knew a fucking piece of shit, kid that was a bully and a snitch that named Jason, and that's the reason he named him that. So it's kind of funny that.
Which is funny. I wonder if these people know, like there's a famous Freddy Krueger, and Fred Krueger's like, I didn't bully him, or I didn't mean to bully him, or I'm sorry, or yeah, I fucked him, bullied him. Now look at me. made him rich.
I made him what he was.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah. I inspired him.
Stop hitting yourself, nerd. In The Last House on the Left in 1972, Craven also used the same experience as inspiration, calling the villain Krug in that one.
Oh my God. He was tormented by this kid.
Yeah, he really hated this guy. Freddy's burns came from a man with severe burn scars by whom Craven had once been terrified as a child. And Freddy's attire, especially the dirty clothes and hat, was inspired by an alcoholic hobo that Craven saw staring at him through the window one day when he was 10 years old.
That's fucking creepy.
That is creepy. Now, that I understand why that would give a person nightmares.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Wes Craven's original concept for Freddy was considerably more gruesome, with teeth showing through the flesh over the jaw, pus running from the sores, and part of the skull showing through the head. Makeup artist David B. Miller argued that an actor wouldn't be convincingly made up that way, and a puppet would be hard to film and wouldn't blend well with the live actors, so these ideas were eventually abandoned.
I think that was a smart choice.
Yeah, I mean, and especially the fact that later on, it's like, the way that England emotes with the face, he couldn't have actually done that as well if he had even more makeup on top of it.
That's true.
It would take about 3 hours to get Robert Englund into his Freddy makeup.
4 hours if you ask him.
According to Wes Craven, Robert Englund was not the first choice for the role of Fred Krueger. Craven had initially wanted a stuntman to play the part, but upon testing several stuntmen, he realized he needed a real actor. Other ideas were to cast an elderly actor, but he feared he would be too soft for the way that he would have wanted the character to act. Englund eventually got the part by showing up at the audition, and get this, with ash smeared under his eyes to sink them, grease in his hair from a dipstick from underneath the hood of his car, and then blinking as little as possible.
Oh my God.
He really got into the audition for this.
He went in there smelling like dirty motor oil. Gross. You didn't have anything else to slick your hair with. You decided this at the last minute. He must have decided last minute.
He's like, what can I do to stand out for this role? Oh, shit. Well, get me some oil and, just like, ugh.
Jesus Christ.
In the original script, Freddy's famous red and green sweater was red and yellow based upon the colors worn by Plastic Man, who, like Freddy, could change his form. The idea was that whatever Freddy changed into would be yellow and red. Side note, we was talking about earlier about how colors influence how people think and stuff.
Yeah.
Red and yellow actually make people hungry. That's the reason McDonald's uses that as their
shit.
colors.
That makes sense. I mean, fuck, I'm thinking about red and yellow, and I'm thinking about fucking McDonald's French fries and some ketchup.
However, when Wes Craven read an article in Scientific American in 1982 that the two most contrasting colors to the human retina were red and green, he decided to alter the colors.
Yeah, pretty fucking smart. And talk about bringing science into it. I've heard that red is not a color that customers like to see in customer service, that you should be, I don't know, but all I know is that as a female service advisor talking to someone about automotive, they put all the women in black to make them look more dominant at our dealership. And let me tell you, that shit worked.
I could see that. And also the reason you don't want red is because in nature, red always signifies poison. That's the way that a creature, even if they're going to, try to, like even if they don't have poison, some animals have developed the defense mechanism where they're bright red or bright yellow, so that other creatures think that they're poisonous, which is hilarious because, I mean, red lipstick on women, what is that saying about guys? It's like, I like the danger. Come on.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, clearly they do. I'll fuck with you all day long. Like,
but yeah, it's weird psychology from evolution.
And it fucking works. I will tell you that much.
The idea behind the glove was a practical one on Wes Craven's part, as he wanted to give the character a unique weapon, but also something that could be made cheaply and wouldn't be difficult to use or transport. At the time, he was studying primal fears embedded in the subconscious of people of all cultures and discovered that one of those fears is attacked by animal claws. Around the same time, he saw that he saw his cat unsheathe its claws, and the two concepts merged, although in the original script, the blades were fishing knives, not steak knives, as in the finished film. This goes on. I mean, there's something else I get into later about how he saw something else that inspired the dream portion of this, but you got to give credit to Craven. He was sitting there debating the colors scientifically. He was thinking about human fears and the fact that animal claws are a primal fear that we have. Like, he really thought this out.
Oh my God.
The words Elm Street are not spoken at all during this movie.
Nope.
Freddy Krueger was designed by Wes Craven to be the typical silent serial killer, such as Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers. However, in the sequels, Freddy developed a cheeky persona that enabled him to be a black-humored villain. At around 1 hour, 7 minutes, there is a scene where Nancy attempts to warn Glenn that Freddy is coming after him. She looks down to discover Freddy's mouth and tongue had taken the form of the bottom half of the phone, which is actually a pretty cool effect.
Yes, I love it.
This effect was made with cheap rubber and prosthetics. The effects team also reportedly stated Heather Langenkamp wanted to take the prop home after shooting, which they thought was unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I have that phone with a tongue that sticks out of the bottom of it? For research purposes.
Yes, for research. You know, the Freddy tongue is definitely iconic. It shows up a few more times.
Yes, several versions of it. The scene where Freddy passes through the wall above Nancy was shot by stretching a sheet of spandex across a hole in the wall and pressing against it. The shot Freddy is played by special effects designer Jim Doyle.
Oh, wow.
That is a really cool effect, though. It's almost got like a shadow demon thing about it. Another thing, to show how good they did with a minimal budget. I mean, just a cheap bit of spandex, but it looks good. Like, it actually looks a lot better than some of the late 90s, early 2000s stuff that we've covered, where they did similar things, but with CGI. Like, that looked like shit, at that time. In this movie, Nancy is shown watching Raimi's The Evil Dead as she struggles to stay awake watching it. Craven decided to include the scene because Raimi had featured a poster of Craven's The Hills Have Eyes in that film as a jab to show audiences the movie they're watching is scarier than Craven's. So, not one to leave, a rivalry untouched. In response to Craven's in-joke, Raimi then went ahead and had Freddy's glove in the tool shed scene of Evil Dead 2, and then later in Ash vs. Evil Dead in honor of his passing.
Aww.
But yeah, Freddy and then Craven, or and the Evil Dead stuff, just keep going back and forth. And it's funny too because the Necronomicon makes an appearance in Jason Goes to Hell later, kind of bringing all three of them into the same kind of universe,
which is funny. It's like they had a friendly rivalry going on.
A few days before the film was to go into general release, the processing lab that had the negative informed New Line that it was keeping the film because it had not been paid. At the last minute, however, Robert Shea was able to negotiate a deal.
Wow.
It's like, you want your movie back, bitch? You got to pay us.
Damn.
Although the character is credited as Freddy Krueger in the sequels and is more well known by that name, he is credited as Fred Krueger in this movie.
Oh, yes. I feel like they keep calling him that even in the second film.
Oh, they do. Yeah. He's not known as Freddy until 3 and then later, I think.
I got a question, though. How much did they have to pay? Okay, so a few days before the film has to go into general release, the processing lab had to get paid. I wonder how much it cost. And if they negotiate based on budget of the film or projected gross or anything. I guess you can't really do projected gross, but I wonder what the processing fee was, because I want to say it was probably pennies compared to what most films would be. And this film grossed so much.
It would be, but the problem is that literally, Robert Shea had no money at the point he was making this. It's that's the reason it's the house that Freddy bet is. It was he's like, I'm rolling the dice. If this movie doesn't do anything, then we're fucked.
Yeah. $57 million from a less than $2 million budget is fuck. And brought a whole fucking production company back from the brink of fucking going bankrupt.
Yep, and then they would go on to make, I mean, like all kinds of movies after that. I mean, New Line is accredited with like the Austin Powers movies, the Lord of the Rings, for God's sakes. I mean, it's they started out here. This is
started from the bottom.
Wes Craven wrote the script and presented it in '81 to try to sell it to major studios, but no one wanted it. Even his friend and business partner Sean S. Cunningham, who made Friday, and also helped Craven make Last House on the Left, wasn't totally convinced it would work as a premise. Craven said that it just flew around for about 3 years until Robert Shave New Line, who was a distributor, wanted to produce movies, picked it up.
Wow. But you did skip one. You skipped the Johnny Depp one about him not feeling confident in his own acting or his own performance.
Which
we can tell. We can tell.
Yeah, you can tell that Johnny Depp was like so fresh in this movie.
Oh,
that, he was just like, I don't know about this, and then like years later, he's like, I'm Edward Scissorhands, bitch, like that sort of thing.
Oh my God, I did not. Oh, I didn't put those two together. Of course I didn't. Why would I?
Nancy's house has a blue door in this movie, but in all the sequels, it is an iconic red door.
Oh, yeah.
In various interviews, Robert Englund stated that Freddy's walk and mannerisms were inspired by his costume and looking at himself in the mirror. When he put on the fedora, he thought of old gangster movies and decided to give Freddy a swagger akin to a famous gangster movie actor, James Cagney.
Oh, my
God. Which is funny because James Cagney, if I remember right, had like this bulbous long nose, and it and Freddy's kind of got a more prominent nose too.
Yeah.
And because the full glove with real metal knives as opposed to the stunt glove with the fake knives was so heavy, he found himself unintentionally dropping his right shoulder due to the weight, and so he equated the stance with a gunslinger who has his pistol and holster on his hip.
Yeah.
As for the unusual way Freddy walks, he studied his posture and derived the sideways movement from a surfer standing sideways on a surfboard.
Makes sense, because that's how I feel like he's always standing.
Yeah. That goes into it too. I mean, like him adding that little stuff to Freddy also adds to the weird, like unnatural, way that, or a thing about Freddy that even if you're not picking up on it, like consciously, subconsciously, you're like, this isn't right. He's not standing the way a person should. Prior to making the film, Amanda Weiss had never seen a horror movie, and Heather Langenkamp had only ever seen Burnt Offerings in '76. Kind of going back to what we talked about, we've talked about several times about how it's hilarious that Scream Queens either don't like horror movies or they've never actually seen them prior to being in these movies.
I wonder if that's better for the acting aspect. Like,
well, yeah, because you think about it, you take a horror, like, fan, we're so numb to horror movies that, like, we couldn't react. I mean, we could, like, if you were a good actor, but it's, like, one of those things that, but, like, in these movies, like, some of these, like, screams that they're getting are real screams, like, real fear. Because, like, these people are just like, I don't like this,
Yeah, I feel you.
The first was originally supposed to be set in Los Angeles, California. The script mentions the San Fernando Valley. A filmed but cut line from the film has a teenager say California is the most high and palmy state, man, in the classroom scene, and the palm trees are visible in the background of some scenes. The detail was changed for the final cut of the film to make it vague in which city the movie was, which I don't know how vague it is. I mean, you clearly see those palm trees, but regardless.
Is that just a California thing?
The palm trees. No, I mean, you can get by with
Nevada.
You can get by with saying it's Florida. There's
that's
several
true,
there along
the
coast, but
Florida, Nevada. I'm trying to think where else, but yeah, that's really about it.
But they wanted the town's name or possible location. It was never stated in the movie at any point. The second movie establishes the town's name as Springwood, and then later movies confirm the location as Springwood, Ohio, because they wanted it set in the Midwest. Because you get more despite what Hollywood thinks now, catering to the Midwest actually gets the bulk of your moviegoers.
Wow. Interesting.
Because I mean, that's where a lot of the populations, that's going to be consuming these is actually from. Because I mean, if you think about the other slashers, I mean, Jason is from Haddonfield, Illinois, or I mean, Michael is from Haddonfield, Illinois. They don't really establish. I mean, in real life, Jason, Camp Crystal Lake is in New Jersey, but I don't know that they've ever officially said that because they've changed several times where that one's located.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they said, Freddy in Ohio, so they're kind of this region is where they're keeping those at. And then unofficially, Evil Dead, although it's not really a slasher, is set in Tennessee, so it's it's kind of all this little area. This was the second movie produced by New Line Cinema. The first was Alone in the Dark in '82, directed by Jack Shoulder and starring Jack Palance. However, it was given a very limited theatrical release, and then it performed poorly and received bad reviews. It was released straight to video. As such, this movie was New Line Cinema's first genuine mainstream cinematic venture. And Jack Shoulder, who was the one who directed Alone in the Dark, would go on to direct Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Heather Langenkamp's favorite of her performances is in this movie.
Okay.
I don't understand that, though, because she does such a better job in part 3, but she's not in it as much in part 3 either. So
yeah, and I mean, it's the house that Fred built, She was part of something very iconic, and like I said, it's got to be one of those surprise things where it's like, wow,
Yeah, it's one of. I mean, when start a franchise like that, it's hard not to at least be, kind of. I mean, unless you're a total asshole, not to be cognizant of it and to, give it its due. It's like, this is why I have a career.
Yeah.
According to Langenkamp, the melting staircase scene was shot using pancake mix. Wes Craven, however, said that it was oatmeal and glue. The fact track on the DVD says it was Bisquick pancake mix. This scene was directed by Robert Shea, who was on set pressuring the film to wrap, and Craven told Shea he should direct it as it was based on a dream Shea himself had once had. In another interview, Heather Langenkamp added that the mushroom soup was also the ingredients in the staircase mixture.
Oh, my God. It looked like pancake mix. So I'm going to have to agree with her on that because that's exactly what I thought it was.
And it's still a very effective little scene as far as giving you that weird nightmare logic of the steps are dissolving and I can't move in them.
Yeah.
Wes Craven had helped Sean S. Cunningham by working on a few shots for Friday in 1980. In turn, Cunningham directed a few shots near the end of production on this movie when several units were working at once.
Aww.
It's just kind of funny that the two biggest slashers, Freddy and Jason, both are from the two directors who actually roomed together in college.
Aw. Could have been like those Scream guys at the beginning of Scream 6, except they wanted to make a real life movie.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what those characters are based on. Those movies are so meta, I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm surprised the other guy's name wasn't Fred.
But
he was wearing the Freddy Krueger sweater. I mean,
that is true. I mean, and that might have been their way of throwing back. What I would have done instead of maybe naming them Jason and Glenn or whatever, why they just named them Sean and Wes and let the audience go from that.
Yeah.
Heather Langenkamp beat over 200 actresses for the role of Nancy Thompson.
Damn.
Among them were Jennifer Grey, Demi Moore,
wow,
Courtney Cox,
wow,
Tracy Gold, and Claudia Wells.
Okay, so Jennifer Grey, I don't know. She was a good actress, but she was more of a nice girl actress. Well, I guess Nancy is too.
Nancy's probably the ultimate nice final girl of all the ones in the movies.
But she fucking builds some balls, and I just can't see Jennifer Grey getting that strong. Demi Moore, yes, I could see that. Courtney Cox, yeah.
This was Dancing in the Dark Courtney Cox.
Yes,
too,
it was
back in the day.
Yes, it was. As for Tracy Gold, I feel like she was more of a liquor icon back in this time, but Scream Queen? Am I missing something?
Not that I'm aware of. I was trying to remember where Claudia Wells, but
Yeah.
Claudia Wells played the original Jennifer in Back to the Future. Like she was Marty's girlfriend in the original in a smoke show with that. So I don't. She might have stood out too much as being too pretty. To be honest with you.
Excuse me. That's what I was wondering. So I don't know about the last two, but the first, well, Demi Moore and Courtney Cox, I could see it.
Yeah, I could see either one of them because especially at the time, Courtney Cox was so fresh faced and young, she could have definitely pulled that character off, and it would have been interesting. It's interesting that she would later go on to play the role that she did in another Wes Craven franchise.
That's so funny.
Charlie Sheen, John Cusack, Brad Pitt, Kiefer Sutherland, Nick Cage, and C. Thomas Howell were considered for the role of Glenn. And Glenn, of Johnny Depp.
Yeah, Glenn was okay. So, Charlie Sheen, maybe. John Cusack, even a young John, because I know what young John Cusack looked like. No. Brad Pitt, no. I mean, they were only going for looks, but I don't know, something about him, Johnny Depp, because he was so dark looking himself, even though he plays a good character. He doesn't play anything bad in here, but like
he had a Billy Loomis look to him.
Yeah, he really did. And I think it works. Kiefer Sutherland could, but I just don't think it would have looked good. I don't know. You needed that look.
Kiefer, to me, has too much of a dark look, and I say that maybe going based upon like characters he played at the time, because Lost Boys and some of those he had more of a like the bad boy look, and Glenn walked the line, I think, or Johnny Depp's version of it, like he was fresh faced enough, baby faced enough to where it's like, oh, I'm just a nice boyfriend, but then there was a dark edge to him, like you said. Kiefer leaned more toward the dark edge to me at the time.
Yeah, he did. He was a blondie. It's a no for me.
Nick Cage, that's hilarious. I want to be, if I would travel the universes, the multiverse, I want to be in the reality where Nick Cage got cast in this. I want to see what he would have done.
Oh my God. And
then C. Thomas Howell, he was too baby-faced, I feel like. This was like him playing Soda Pop and The Outsiders and stuff like that. So I don't see him having the edge that Johnny Depp did have to him at the time either. So.
And that had to be the only thing that Wes saw was just the look alone, because that's really all that Johnny Depp had at this time.
It is. It really is.
And good on him for seeing it. Johnny Depp got lucky. Basically, he got the pretty card. He got the
The only reason that Charlie Sheen didn't get the role, because they actually he was the pick, was because Robert Shea said that Charlie Sheen wanted more money than they could afford to pay him.
Okay, quit being greedy, bitch.
And the main reason that Johnny Depp was chosen was because Wes Craven's daughter thought that he was dreamy and threatened to run away from home if he wasn't cast in the movie.
Wow, what a little fucking bratty ass cunt.
So there's your reason for why Depp got the role instead of those other ones.
I wonder if she ever got to mess with him.
I don't know. It's hilarious. Some other for the character of Rod, Ralph Macchio and Darren Dalton were considered for the part before Jesus Garcia got it.
Oh my God.
Ralph Macchio would have been a weird pick for Rod.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Even now, Ralph Macchio looks too baby-faced. Even in his 50s or whatever age he is now, like if you watch Cobra Kai, he still looks like too much of a baby face.
Oh yeah.
Rod Jesus had like a good, like, I think that's how it's pronounced, JSU, but he looks like he's got that greaser, like, bad boy look to him in the movie, and it fits the character that they were trying to portray. Somebody who's, the police could immediately look to and say, clearly you're a bad guy. Look at you, you're street trash, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Ralph could not have pulled that off with the way he looked.
Hold on one second. So Jessica Craven, who is Wes Craven's daughter, she was 13 years old at the time. that she was able to get Johnny Depp in the movie. But you'll be surprised to know that Nicolas Cage is the one that convinced Johnny Depp to pursue acting. and got him to audition for Nightmare on Elm Street. Let me see. Obviously, the exposure led to 21 Jump Street, and from there on, teen stardom. Jessica Craven was 13 years old when her father, director Wes Craven, let her sit in on one audition for Nightmare. Her parents were divorced, and she was visiting with her dad. That's why she could pull the "I'll run away." Okay, it wasn't glamorous. It was very much like going with dad to the office. Of course, that was before either of the Cravens could have known Nightmare was going to be a massive hit. Initially, he thought Depp was a poor fit for the Kids Next Door group, and she had a reaction that made him reconsider. Let me see. So we went home. Oh, he said he looked sickly and pale, and she said he's dreamy. Oh my God, that is so funny. 13 years old. That's funny. Anyways, moving on.
And a Kentucky boy done proud because he is from like Louisville area. So there you go.
Of course he is.
Heather Langenkamp's final audition for the role of Nancy took place on Friday the 13th.
Of course.
January 1984. In the scene where Nancy falls asleep in class, the student starts to quote a line from Hamlet. "Oh God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams." This is the start of a theme in later movies to open with the quotes from early tales of horror and tragedy from authors like Poe, Nietzsche, and the Bible.
Oh my God. Edgar Allan Poe is so weird, and my daughter's into that. Of course she is.
Yeah. It's kind of got the Tim Burton effect.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like one goes with the other. A popular myth surrounding the film is that David Warner was originally slated to play Freddy Krueger and the makeup tests were done, but Warner had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. This has been proven false by the filmmakers and by Warner himself in the recent book Never Sleep Again. I think I mentioned this on a previous podcast and Scream that he was, set to be in one of the films. So I don't know how false it is. I feel like they went back and forth on this rumor that Warner was going to be Freddy in the original Nightmare movie. So
yeah.
The scene where Glenn lies on the couch and can hear Tina and Rod having sex was based on an incident with Wes Craven's own life when he lay on a couch listening to a couple having sex next door. Get this, Kane Hodder auditioned to play Freddy Krueger.
Too buff. And he might not have been at the time, so.
No, I think he was always kind of a bulky guy.
Oh, okay.
He would, of course, later play Jason in the Friday series and very briefly play Freddy's arm and did his laugh at the end of Jason Goes to Hell.
Wow.
So there you go. Kane Hodder did get to play Freddy, at least in part.
Yes, literally. Shut up.
The basis for the film was inspired by the phenomena Asian death syndrome, where people died in the middle of their nightmares. It's also known as Brugada syndrome.
Yeah, but okay, so Asian death syndrome. What? Is it legally even able to be called that now?
Probably not. It's from China.
China. But there's a whole that has to do with doesn't that have to do with what we discussed? It was the spirit that you had me discuss when we did it wasn't The Ring, was it? Or was it the other one? That was the Japanese. I'm thinking the Japanese one. See, I'm mixing up my cultures. Way to go, Raina.
Well, this doesn't say that it was Chinese. It just,
oh yeah, Asian.
That, make fun of Trump, but
but yeah, because they were saying that was the spirit, is a vengeful spirit, and she kills you while you're sleeping, blah blah blah. So could be very much.
Yeah, and that might be why it's called Asian, because they were the first ones to really notice it as a thing. Because I'm sure in other cultures it's happened, but in Western it's like, oh, they died peacefully in their sleep, and of course the person was having a terrible nightmare, and they
they're like, no, there was a woman hovering over him, and she was choking him with her long black hair.
This movie bears a stark contrast to its slasher brethren like Halloween and Friday the 13th, which always portray a group of teenagers being terrorized while cut off from any adults and authority figures. Here, the parents are very much a part of the story. Also, on the suggestion of writer-director Wes Craven's daughter, who was annoyed that women in his previous movie, Swamp Thing, trip and fall all the time while being chased, Craven made the heroine much less vulnerable and clumsy.
Aww.
So that was actually a wise decision, because I think Nancy is probably one of the best written final girls in that sense. Like, she stands up in a way that
Yeah.
a lot of them would later go on to emulate, but she started it.
Which is funny because Nancy has a lot of reason to fall and be clumsy. She's literally thrown obstacles.
She's half asleep all the time.
She's half asleep. She's got obstacles. I mean, she would have had every excuse to be.
An early concept of the art depicted Freddy wearing a long trench coat inspired by a homeless man Wes Craven saw as a child through a window. Freddy wouldn't wear a trench coat in the series, though, until New Nightmare in 1994.
Okay, damn.
Tina mentions to Nancy that a big earthquake may be coming, which foreshadows New Nightmare in 94, which there are several earthquakes. And I don't know, is that a legit thing? Because I remember when I was watching this, I was going to ask you this. It's like, because she mentioned to her, she's like, maybe there's an earthquake going to happen because people start having weird dreams right before that seems like that would be a legit thing, like that people would somehow subconsciously sense that something's going to happen. But I don't know if that's actually a thing that happens out there or not.
Yes, and I can confirm that I do have weird dreams. But I don't feel the earthquakes. I mean, literally, I joke all the time that I've had farts that shook the bed more than any of the earthquakes, But I don't know if it's how my dogs are responding or whatnot. But yeah, I can confirm that usually the week of that we have a quotation mark earthquake, my dreams are off the Richter scale, but And we did have a rather big earthquake in 1994. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was Los Angeles because we were supposed to go to Disneyland and we didn't get to go. So San Fernando Valley, which is where this movie was allegedly supposed to take place.
Yep, or at least originally.
Yes.
Good to know. I thought that was interesting. I was like, well, that makes sense if that's actually a thing, but I didn't know if that was, something that actually happened.
Oh yeah, and as a dreamer, I mean, and I've never related it. Now I'm gonna be like, great, another thing to add to my, what did I dream about that, and why did I dream about that, But usually, I have active dreams anyway, so I don't know. It's hard for me to pinpoint. But sometimes, as of lately, I haven't had dreams at all, which is nice. Sometimes.
I always have dreams.
Yeah.
I'm just one of those people. The only times that I've never, and it's been super weird, is the times when I've been medically, put to sleep or whatever for like procedures or something. And then like the lack of time,
Yes.
like in between, it fucks with me so much. It's just like, okay, I had no, I was at this point in time and now I'm at this point in time and there's no in between. What the fuck happened to me?
Time travel. Oh my God. I mean, I personally like the waking up with, I don't know, because I don't sleep good now because of my dreams, which sucks. So I am sleep deprived.
Ronnie Blakely played a country superstar in Nashville in 1975, several years before playing Nancy's mother. Connie Britton, who played the same role, although the character's name was altered in Nightmare on Elm Street, or playing Nancy's mother in the remake, later went on to play a country superstar in the unrelated television series called Nashville.
That's hella funny.
That's just weird. That's weird, like, circumstance.
And Connie, I thought it was Connie Brighton. I'm not sure, but Connie Britton, Connie Brighton, whatever. I think she's a redhead. She is, yes.
Yeah,
and she's good looking.
Yeah, she's got that's one thing that kills me in American Horror Story Death or Murder House.
Yes.
Like the first season, it's like, dude, look who you're married. Like, seriously?
Yeah, she's like a mature woman too, but she's got a look, and it's a natural look. It's not a,
if she's had work done, it's so good that it doesn't stand out.
Oh no, not at all. She's definitely, you can tell she's aging, but she's just, I don't know. She's got this look to her. She doesn't have to look like a sex pot, but she just is. And I'm like, fuck you.
Speaking of not looking your age, in the scene where Nancy has been up for days and looks in a mirror saying, God, I look 20 years old, it was actually an inside joke because Heather Langenkamp was really 20 years old when she did this movie.
Okay, she can be forgiven. Kind of, because it implies that at 20 years old, she looked like a teenager, which she did.
She did, yes.
So she can right the fuck off.
Johnny Depp's next high-profile role was playing the title character in Tim Burton's impressionistic fairy tale, Edward Scissorhands, in which the character also had sharp instruments attached to his fingers.
And was a little unhinged as well, so
Yes.
at times.
Paramount was at one point interested in distributing the movie, which would have paid off the film's debts all at once. However, during screening for the head of Paramount, the film's ending was incomplete, so the editor's assistant had to rush it to the screening, which had to be paused at the most inopportune moment. Paramount eventually passed on the film, so the New Line did the distributing themselves.
Too bad, Paramount.
Paramount did get Wes Craven's other popular franchise, though, Scream. So
Okay.
They did win in the end, at least on one part of it.
You know, they're fair weather friends. They said no when they were low and yes when they were up in the world. So I don't like it.
The scene where Freddy is set, and the funny thing is too, is that Paramount sold the rights to Friday to New Line later on. So
Oh
it's
my
weird
God.
these two companies
They got this
interact with each other
weird,
this
yeah.
way.
I mean, I guess, you know, if you're keeping each other alive, it works.
Freddy Krueger has less than 7 minutes of screen time in this entire movie.
Yeah.
And that goes to show you how good Robert Englund
Yes.
is, because he's barely in the movie, but that's what you remember from the movie.
Yeah.
The scene where Freddy is set on fire, chases Nancy to the top of the stairs, and then falls back down and starts back up again was all shot in one take
Wow.
with several cameras, and was the most elaborate fire scene ever filmed up to that time period. Stuntman Anthony Cesari was supposed to only run up the stairs and then lay down and be extinguished, but he improvised the falling and ran back up again. He won Best Stunt of the Year for that scene.
As he should have.
Yeah, I mean, the dude was legit on fire.
Yes.
It's all over him in that
Oh, yeah.
scene, so it's scary. Like how much. I don't know how they deal with that. Like I'd be freaking out. So
Yeah. I mean, you got people ready to extinguish you at any moment, and you probably have a safe word. I wonder if it's ouch.
it's banana.
Yeah.
In a theme that goes along with Wes Craven, over 500 gallons of fake blood were used during the filming of this movie.
Mostly in one specific scene.
One scene.
Yes.
Yes. Robert Englund cut himself the first time he tried on the infamous Freddy glove.
Way to go, loser.
In the original script, the movie ended happily. Nancy kills Krueger by ceasing to believe in him, and then awakens to discover that everything that happened in the movie was an elongated nightmare. She then says goodbye to her mother and drives to school with her friends. However, Robert Shea wanted a twist ending that would leave the way open for sequels. He suggested fooling the audience into thinking Krueger had been defeated, only to reveal that the final scene itself is an actual nightmare.
Yes.
And then end the film with Freddy driving the car away with the house and the kids screaming. From the house of the kids screaming. Wes Craven hated this ending, and ultimately 4 endings were filmed. Craven's happy ending, Shea's Freddy ending, and 2 versions of a compromise ending Craven and Shea had reached, of a compromise they had reached, in which Nancy's mother is pulled back into the house, but the audience is slightly ambiguous as to what is going on. Craven has always maintained that the film would have been, should have had the happy ending he originally wrote.
No, it shouldn't have. 1. Okay. 2, he hated that scene where Freddy's driving away with the kids in the car, but he uses it again in one of his other movies. So don't be a hypocrite. 3, it worked even though it was, maybe he just didn't like the way the ending looked because it looked like a blow up doll being sucked into a house. But you know what? It fucking worked. Okay.
I mean, people are still talking about it for
Yes.
good or ill. I mean, they still are. In that scene, the top of the convertible came down faster and harder than expected, and so the expression from the actors and actresses is real, where they're like really scared because they weren't expecting it to drop like that.
We love a real impression or expression, I should say.
And it's probably the best acting that Johnny Depp does in the whole movie.
Yes. He had a lot to learn.
In a deleted scene featured on the Laserdisc and VHS from Anchor Bay, we learned that Nancy and many of her friends from the neighborhood weren't always only children. They had a brother or sister before they were killed by Freddy. During the scene in the basement, just before Nancy's mother reveals she has Freddy's glove.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Would make sense because because when I was thinking about this scene and Nancy's mom's like, well, we went after him. I was like, well, why did you go after him? Was Nancy born at the time? Was there an older sibling? was she, what's the deal? You're just trying to get rid of somebody, or did he do something to you? Because me personally, I would just want to keep my child safe from that. I probably wouldn't join in on the vigilante justice.
Yeah, if your child hadn't been involved, but there was the threat to your child.
Yes, and I get that. Maybe some parents would want to just with the threat alone, and that's fine. But if he had actually done something to my kid or taken one of my children from me, absolutely, I would want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes more sense if Freddie had already taken these parents, other like older kids, and like it's the younger ones that are left to, deal with these, nightmares and everything. The scene where Nancy is attacked by Freddie in the bathtub was shot using a bottomless tub, which was put in a bathroom set that had been built over a swimming pool. During the underwater sequence, Langenkamp was replaced with stuntwoman Christina Johnson, and Langenkamp spent 12 hours in the bath during filming.
That is so retarded. Why? What is the meaning of having her spend 12 hours just to get a fucking 30-second scene?
You got to suffer for your craft, I guess. I don't know.
What the hell?
I mean, we talked about Janet Leigh in the infamous Psycho bathtub scene. That took like 3 days of shooting, but we also discussed that might have been, Hitchcock saying, I think we need a tighter shot. It's like, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
A tighter shot of what?
An omen that Johnny Depp's character is about to die occurs as he is lying in bed listening to this radio. The broadcaster announces it's midnight and you're listening to station KRGR, which is Kruger without the vowels. Robert Shea is the voice of the film's producer and owner of New Line Cinema can be heard twice during the film, as the newsreader reporting on Tina's death, and also as the station announcer who says you're listening to KRGR. So that's Robert Shea.
Wow.
The scene where Marge talks to Nancy about Kruger's death and shows her his gloves was extended. Not only would her mother inform her that it was originally extended, not only would her mother inform her that Elm Street teenagers were not only children, but she were not, that they had other kids that were killed, but she would also elaborate on what happened after the mistrial. The scene in the script was extended, and Marge goes into detail by saying that Fred did not die instantly in the fire. Just like a demon surfacing from hell, a burning and frantic Kruger burst from his basement as the flames consumed him. He threatened the parents and swore revenge. As Marge confesses to Nancy, it was actually she who took a gun and shot Fred, delivering the coup de grace.
Wow.
So that, and I don't know, I think that would have been more interesting in its own right too, because that, Freddy already is playing on the trope of the myth of like a vengeful spirit, and now it would be almost like how you would think of like a vengeful witch ghost or something. It's like
the Sanderson sisters.
The one last thing they say before they burn to death. It's like, you'll pay for this. The scene of Tina thrashing across the ceiling was shot using a rotating room set, which was slowly spun to allow her to roll in position. Because there wasn't any money for mechanical hydraulics, the rolling had to be done by hand, and everything inside, props, camera, lighting, had to be carefully balanced. The camera was bolted to the wall, and the cameraman strapped into a chair beside it, which turned in tandem with the room. For the two shots where Rod and Tina reach for each other as Tina's on the ceiling, she is really lying on the floor, and Garcia is upside down with his hair pasted down to stay flat. The effect was so good that just before shooting began, Weiss got a bad case of vertigo.
Wow.
Filming that. And that just goes to show you how much work they put into making that budget. For the blood geyser sequence where Glenn is killed, the filmmakers used the same revolving room set that was used for Tina's death. They had put the set so that it was upside down and attached to the camera so that it looked like the room was right side up, and then they poured gallons of red water. The red came from food coloring. Normal movie blood couldn't create the right effect for the geyser into the room by pumping it down through the bed.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The room itself was to be turned as the blood flowed, but it was turned in the wrong direction. So instead of the blood gushing out of the bed and then splashing down the walls, it gushed out of the bed and onto the room through the open door where the camera and equipment were, with exposed wires and electrical sockets. The power on the set went out, but no one was injured. On the commentary, Wes Craven remarks that the room spinning the wrong way was like a Ferris wheel from hell, and the blood was water mixed with food coloring. The scene was partly inspired by the elevator scene in The Shining from 1980.
Oh my God. I mean, that's awesome. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Probably really scary because they're like, fuck, we already don't have a good budget, you know?
And we just destroyed probably a camera in the process filming this.
Yeah. Son of a bitch.
At around 1 hour and 11 minutes, when Nancy's trying to bring Freddy to reality, she tells her dad to break the door down in 20 minutes. At that point, it's 20 minutes literally until the movie ends.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
During the scene where Nancy is running toward her house with Freddy right behind her, Heather Langenkamp actually cut her foot and required stitches. When viewing this scene, you can clearly see her limping as she enters her house. This wasn't acting, but rather a genuine reaction to her injury. If you look closely, you can see the bandage she's wearing on the last shot of the goose stare sequence, which takes place just moments later.
Damn.
Robert Englund says he based Freddy Krueger on serial killers Ted Bundy and Dennis Rader, the BTK killer.
But Dennis Rader was definitely one of the good dad killers.
Okay, so there you go. And in his room, Glenn has a stuffed vulture doll just behind his bed that looks down on him, an omen of his impending fate, since vultures are known to feast on dead animals.
Yeah.
Death Holler Awards. What do we think about Nancy?
Ultimate final girl. I mean, if they had Freddy Krueger games like they have Friday the 13th games, she'd be the fucking she'd be the final guy, if you will.
For sure, and there's several reasons for that. I mean, the fact that she does that whole Home Alone, like, booby trap thing toward the end of the movie, like that's a trope now associated with final girls, is that they take whatever, like gardening tools, whatever's, at their disposal to set traps for the killer, because they can't physically overpower them. And I feel like she epitomized that trope more than any other final girl.
Yeah.
Because she's literally going through the house setting up ways to trap him as he, things that'll fly down and stab him, cut him, whatever, while she's running away from him.
Fuck it. She is the original Home Alone child.
And the fact that she's doing this on next to no sleep, like she is probably the most tortured in a psychological sense.
Oh, yeah.
Of any final girl out there. I mean,
she's like, I'm surprised. Well, maybe in later movies, I don't know, but like, I'm surprised her sleep deprived life has not affected her real life, where she's actually killing somebody innocent, thinking that she's getting Freddy.
There's a potential for that, yes, as a story, for sure. Yeah, that she's seeing things and she's hallucinating in real life. And, yeah, there's definitely a story there. What about the OG Freddy / Trudeau Freddy, blackface Freddy?
They really did make him an OG. Well, he made himself an OG, literally, with his mannerisms and how he created the character of Freddy Krueger. And he's just, what can we say but we love Freddy?
I mean, he's iconic. He's up there. I mean, he'll always be up there because, he, there's a charisma about him that he shouldn't even have.
Oh, yeah.
But it's there.
He did that shit on purpose.
That's actually the detriment to the series, because you can recast the stuntman that plays Michael. You can recast the stuntman that plays Jason. It's going to be hard to get somebody to play Chucky that doesn't have Brad Dourif's voice if he's not around to voice it, because it's not the same, as evidenced by the remake that had Mark Hamill in the role. But Freddy, that's the reason they've never been able to reboot the series, because if you don't have, and he's up there in age too, and that makes it different. But if you don't have Robert Englund, he's Freddy. And people don't want somebody else taking on that role that can't match what he's done with it.
How did the actor do when they did a remake?
That's the most hated thing by the people who hate the remake, is because he went more of the route that, Jackie Earl Haley done his own thing in it, because he didn't want to try to retread, what Robert Englund had done. Yeah. And he's commendable for doing that, but like the way that he portrays it is not charismatic at all. It's like you legitimately hate the dude.
Yeah. And Noah did say that he was a lot more savage.
Yes. I mean, it's more like he's going that route with it, like the angry, like I'm going to get my revenge type thing, as opposed to Freddy, who's playing a game with everybody who's involved, and so it's tough. I mean, he's both the blessing and the curse of the series in the sense that you can't move on without him. Or at least it's going to be tough. But this is weird. They are currently talking about getting the Stranger Things writers to make a new, with the help of Mike Flanagan, no less, to do a new Nightmare movie. And that combination sounds so fucking awesome that I can't imagine.
It does. It sounds almost too good to be true, but like, what are they going to do with the Freddy character? I know my husband liked the Freddy Krueger. He did the newer one. He was like, because it was different.
England says he would come back for that movie if they go forward with it.
God. Holy shit, dude. Well, we'll see.
But the problem with that is if he only comes back for one more movie, then where do you go from there? Even if they blow it out of the water, which they would with that combination.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is with Freddy, you might not be able to copy the mannerisms, but you might. You might get an actor that can do it. And there's somewhere out there. And the other good news is that then with the makeup, you could definitely fake it,
Yeah. I mean, they could do that. Horror fans, unfortunately, are very closed-minded when it comes to any kind of changes to, and I understand that because there's been several that have been ruined, and there's a reason for that. But they're very close-minded when it comes to like reboots or like changes to like beloved icons, because horror fans are very traditionalists. They like the rules to be set in place. They like to, for it to have nostalgia to it. And whenever there's big changes like that, it totally goes against everything that they stand for. So it's going to be rough to convince them to be on board with anything they do change that way.
Oh, and clearly we notice very simple changes, like when I noticed Jason's butt wasn't the same size as the previous Jason.
He had a lot more junk in that trunk.
Yeah, like what the fuck? What are these flapjacks over here?
Best kill, hands down, it's
Glenn. Yeah, that fucking blood geyser, it was beautiful.
And it's such a refreshing change after watching the Scream movies, which are literally just stabs for the most part, to see something like Glenn's death.
Yes.
The best Scream, it's probably Nancy.
Yeah.
It's
ultimate Scream queen, literally.
Yeah, she's got the scream down. She's got the she's attacking the villain like the classic Scream Queen trope. I mean, there's a reason her name is up there with all the rest.
Yes, I have my favorite for part 2, and I hope it's the same as yours.
Oh, it's for sure the same one. There's no way around part 2. Best Freddy quote: "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy."
Yes. Fucking Freddy. Oh, Frederick.
Oh, Frederick Krueger. Best side character, I guess Glenn. I mean, there's not really good. The cast is so tight, and which is a good thing in this one, that there's really not a lot of side characters in the film.
Yeah. There isn't. Yeah, it's a first time film, and it was a low budget film, so you're really not gonna get that.
I mean, I could see the argument for Rod if somebody wanted to say he was, because he has more personality than Glenn, but it's a toss up. I mean, amongst those two. How annoying is Doom Prophet? The only one that I can think of for this movie is Tina, because she sees Freddy first and she keeps trying to get other people to admit they've seen him, and then nobody else will.
Yeah, then Tina for sure.
And she's not really annoying. Like, she's got a legit reason. She's like, "Are you guys having the same fucking nightmares that I'm having?" And it's like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about, bitch. I don't dream," like that sort of shit. So, and then dumbest moment is Glenn not listening to Nancy and fucking falling asleep on his waterbed.
Oh my God.
KRGR radio.
KRGR. He wasn't listening to KRGR before he went to bed, okay?
No.
He was listening to FRDY, okay?
I think that's hilarious though, that he was listening to music on his portable his boombox.
Yeah.
But also watching a mini TV on top of that was completely separate from that. That's probably the most 80s thing I've ever seen in a movie.
Isn't it though?
And of course, he had that classic in this movie. He had that classic cut off football jersey that, you know, Tatum or Rose McGowan would wear later in Scream. You know, that's where that came from.
Oh my God.
I think that wraps it up for the original. You can join us next for part 2, which is a very, very queer sequel.
Isn't it?